Okay.
No,
Good afternoon.
apologize. No, you're all good. We're pretty used to that.
All right, we are live. Good afternoon. This is Senate Institutions, and today's Tuesday, February 17th, 2026. Sorry for starting off a little late. We have 3 items today on our agenda. The first one is Vermont Humanities. Second one is State of Vermont IT funding, and we'll have Adam Gresham, the Commissioner of Department of Finance and Management, in here. And then the third item at 3 p.m. is going to be data management and sharing policies, and we'll have the Secretary of State. So now we have Christopher Kaufman-Ilstrup, who is the Executive Director of the Vermont Humanities. And thank you very much for being with us. We'll go around and introduce ourselves. I'm Wendy Harrison. I represent the Windham District.
And Rob Plunkett, Banks District.
Joe Major, Windsor.
Senator Ross Ingalls, Essex District.
John Benson, the Orange District. Nice to meet you all. Thanks very much. I saw you were handing out artifacts from the 200, so I brought you all some 250th stickers in case you don't have them.
Oh, nice.
Could feel free to pass them on. I'm a member of the 250th Commission that the governor appointed. What seems like 9 million years ago now, but we are finally here in 2026, which is pretty exciting. So thank you for having me. It's been quite a year for Vermont Humanities and the other state affiliates of the federal cultural agencies. Thank you for rescheduling my testimony. I was supposed to be here last week, but I was very sick. And now I guess Ken is very sick. So
Yes.
be careful.
But you weren't here, so you didn't cause
I
it.
didn't catch it from him and I didn't give it to him.
Yes.
Just as by way of a brief introduction, when we talk about the creative sector here in Vermont, we mean all the businesses, for-profit and nonprofit, and individuals whose work is rooted in creativity. So that's studios, maker spaces, media businesses, writers, photographers, and of course, humanists like me, cultural organizers. We tend to work a lot with the libraries, with public libraries, and with historical societies and museums. Our sector is very large, it's very diverse, and we've had a pretty strong economic punch. In 2023, the creative sector overall contributed 10,000 jobs. My organization is 10 of those, and about $1.2 billion to the Vermont economy. Our message last week was, of course, to share how our work is essential to the state of Vermont. But I'm coming in actually at Senator Harrison's advice to talk about a specific thing that we do, which is Vermont Reads. And with that in mind, I have actually given you another collector's item, some of the very last copies of Vermont Reads 2025, The Light Pirate, and the Senator from Windham, Lily Brooks Dalton, grew up in York County. She doesn't live there now, but she will be back in Vermont for us in April, and I hope you can visit with her then. You're probably aware that Vermont Humanities is the sister agency to the Vermont Arts Council, and as the National Endowment for the Arts is the sister agency to the National Endowment for the Humanities. All 56 states and jurisdictions around the country have both a state arts agency like the Arts Council and a state humanities council. And as you probably also know, in April of 2025, we had a little problem with the federal administration that terminated all funding for state humanities councils across the nation after over 50 years of really consistent support for arts and humanities work in the states. The claim was that our nonpartisan relationship to the federal government was no longer in alignment with the administration's priorities, and they eliminated virtually all NEH, National Endowment for the Humanities grants, and fired 60% of the staff at NEH at that time. Bottom line for us is that $630,000 of lawfully appropriated funding vanished overnight, and it has not come back. That means we went from 13 full-time staff people to 10, and we had to cancel several programs. Fortunately, Vermont Reads is not one of them. You can find a lot of information about this in the New York Times if you want. It's intense. It can also be very boring. Or we can go out to coffee and talk about it. but I'd really love to talk about some of the more positive things that we've been doing over the last year. And you did ask me to come and talk about Vermont Reads. So this is the 24th. We're about to announce the 25th Vermont Reads book. It's an annual program to encourage all Vermonters to read and take action together to build community around the themes of one book that we choose each year. Early books in the program back in the early 2000s included collections of poetry by Robert Frost and Billy Collins. To Kill a Mockingbird is a classic group read book. That was a book for one of our years. And our very first year was for the senator from Bennington County, Witnessed by Vermont writer Karen Hess, who lives in your neck of the woods. That was about the history of the Klan in Vermont, which is very interesting. Program has really grown very considerably in the last few years. In fact, the top 3 most popular Vermont Reads books are in the last 4 years of the program, including Gather by Oxbow Principal Ken Caddo, which was by far our biggest and most successful book. 138 community projects happened around the state related to Gather. Ken actually, it's amazing to think that he could also be a principal, traveled to 21 author events for us, plus innumerable other ones that he didn't run for us because he knew we would tell him he needed his boundaries during the course of the year. This current book, The Light Pirate, again by Windham County native Lily Brooks Dalton, is now number 2 with 109 projects. Sadly, because of Doge, we have run out of books, and that is why this is now a collector's item, and I had to beg for them. We gave away 4,850 books over the last 6 months of the program since it started on July 1st. Normally, we would be continuing to accept new projects all the way through June 30th, but we can't do that this year. We are out, and we have to spend our money on the next book. We can't order more. We are very excited to announce our next book in 2 weeks' time. It's actually the first time we will have commissioned a new work by a Vermont writer to lead off this program. And not only is it published locally in Vermont, but it will actually be distributed internationally. And it's getting a lot of buzz around the country. So
Are you able to share that? Or
it is not even published or announced yet.
Okay.
It is.
so then don't tell us because we're on.
I will bring you the newsletter in 2 weeks' time that announces it,
That's
and
exciting.
then you will have it. But it comes out on June 20th. The most important thing about Vermont Reads book is not getting people to read the book, though. That's a side benefit to get people reading. What we really want to do is help people take action around the themes of the book. So El Viaje Más Caro, The Most Costly Journey, was our 2022 book. It increased volunteerism across the state and supported immigrant communities. March by Representative John Lewis inspired youth leadership initiatives in schools all over Vermont when we did that book in 2019, right before the pandemic. And The Light Pirate is a book about climate resilience, and it's encouraging environmental and flood resilience projects all over Vermont. And that, of course, was intentional when we chose it. We knew that we had been experiencing severe flooding all over the state for year after year after year. And we wanted a book that would get people talking about what they could do in their community to prepare for and develop adaptations around flooding issues. As I said, The Light Pirate's the second most popular book after Gather, 4,850 copies. Currently, there's been 55 Speakers Bureau talks related to the book, including talks about 1800 and Froze to Death, which historians here might remember as 1816, the year that there was snow every month of the year. We have a talk now about settlement patterns on rivers in Vermont that's been very popular. And we have another talk about the 1938 hurricane that was so devastating in the early part of the 20th century. Hosts have scheduled 28 facilitated discussions on the book so far, with expected attendance of around 500 people. And discussions did happen in correctional facilities, and I know you have a particular interest in that. They've been reading the book in both Newport and Springfield. We would really like to be doing more work in corrections. That has been, especially after the pandemic, very, very difficult. I know we have limited time today, but if you'd like to get together and talk about that or have me back to talk about the kind of work that we can do in corrections, I would be delighted.
Well, we have time. I mean,
We have time.
Till 2.
Yeah, well, great. So the correctional facilities really shut down to all outside programming in March of 2020. And it was challenging before that to do correctional programming from outside cultural nonprofits or outside nonprofits of any sort for lots of different, very, very good reasons, and also occasionally bureaucratic reasons that we struggled with. And frequently you would work and work and work for months and months on getting something into a facility, and you would show up on the day of all prepared to go, and something will have happened and they won't let you in. After the pandemic, that just got exponentially harder. And corrections, I'm not super prepared to talk about this in detail today, but corrections has really resisted having outside programming back in, because it does disrupt their flow to a certain extent, despite the fact that it's proven that programs like this actually do a lot around helping with education and preventing recidivism. For 40 years now, we've been doing work in corrections. We've done a lot of poetry workshops over the years. What we decided to start with going back into the facilities after the pandemic was just Vermont Reads, because it's a very simple thing to hand somebody a paperback book and read it, and then talk about it, and then talk about how it connects to your life. So we've been working in Newport and Springfield. We would like to be all over. We would like to be in all the facilities. We would like to be able to expand back out into other kinds of programming. We'd like to be doing writing workshops. We'd like to be doing Shakespeare in prisons again. We can't do that right now. That's been very hard for them to manage. Another challenge for us there has been that they tend to want to run things through the community high school program, which is an awesome program, and I am not in any way denigrating it. But it does exclude every inmate who already has a diploma. So you can only actually include the inmates who are not yet holding high school degree. And that, precludes access to an awful lot of people. So that's a bit of a challenge. The other thing that I wanted to mention, and I've heard this from the State Department of Libraries over and over again, is that getting new books into the prison libraries is a priority and should be easy. But it's not, in part because there's no budget for getting new books into the prison libraries. The State Department of Libraries has taken care of that in the past. They don't have the resources for it now. The Corrections Department has not picked up that line item. And so getting books into the libraries has been really difficult. So it's great when we can bring these books in and we can put a copy in the library and give copies to the group of inmates that signed up. But it would be even better if there was some small budget line that existed. It doesn't have to be much, that could actually support getting new books into the libraries on a regular basis.
Yep. Do you mind a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, I have heard that there's an issue where the DOC needs to get the books directly from the publisher. Is that still the case?
That has been true in the past, and it would be nice if that could change. If they could accept books from charitable organizations like ours or from the State Department of Libraries. I think one of the things that they have cited there is that there's safety issues, and that's why they want them to come directly from the publisher, so that they haven't been altered in any way before they come into the prison library. But it seems like that should be a solvable problem.
That's what I'm thinking. And there's got to be another way to verify that a book is physically safe.
Yeah.
And at least in my community, we have lots and lots of used books that are sold. I mean, we have 3 bookstores in my community, and
and there's so many used books that mostly they don't get sold.
Right,
They get pulled.
thrown away.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Every public library in Vermont that has a used book sale, and they'll tell you they have to clear it out because there's too many donations.
So then when the Humanities Foundation or Vermont Humanities provides books, do they go you don't take the books yourself into.
We do.
prison. Oh, you do. So you
Yeah.
have that authority.
Yeah.
That ability.
We have a staff person, Morgan Irons, who's worked for us for many decades on corrections work. And she is able to bring 15 copies of The Light Pirate in, have them inspected, and
Okay.
get them to the inmates.
Can she only bring these books or can she bring other books?
She has not tried to bring other books yet because they're not accepting other books
Okay.
into the libraries, but we'd be happy to test it out.
Well, I don't want her to get in trouble. I don't want her to be a mule for us. But it's just interesting. So, when you had the gather, I was just really taken with Gather. It's, if any of you haven't read it, it's a really, really good book. And it's about a young boy growing up in really tough circumstances, and doing what he needs to do. And I just love the language. It's just so raw and perfect, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I would think that a lot of folks who are incarcerated could see themselves in, or someone they know in it.
I think if we could have, we would have given a copy to every inmate.
Right. So maybe
That
if
would
we
have
can,
been amazing.
yeah, so maybe we can find donations or something
Yeah.
do you accept donations?
Well, of course we do. Yeah, about, especially now, lacking federal support. About before this happened with Doge, about 40% of our budget was federal, and about 17% of our budget was our state appropriation. So just a little over half was federal and state government support. The other half is raised privately. And then since Doge, of course, we've had to really step up the private fundraising, and we've been quite successful at that on an emergency basis.
Right.
But I will say that that is unlikely to last, right? That's not sustainable over the long. And the reason why we have the National Endowment for the Humanities and the National Endowment for the Arts is so that everybody contributes. So yeah, so absolutely. And the reason why we were able to give out so many copies of Gather, we actually gave out about 10,000 copies of Gather. Is because the wonderful folks at Phoenix Books gave us a grant to purchase twice as many books as we normally get. And I think we probably could have given out even a bunch more.
I would have. I still would. Is it still available from the publisher?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
you can get it at any bookstore.
Right. I'm just thinking if we go to the publisher, it would be less expensive.
Yeah. Yeah. And, and this is the thing that we're set up for, right? If we have enough resources, we have direct relationships with the publisher. We can buy them for 40%. If you go to Phoenix Books and buy a copy of Gather, it's going to cost you $20. But if we buy it, it's going to cost $80.
Okay. So let's work together.
Yeah.
All right. Are there other questions? I just want to.
Yeah. And then I
Yeah.
can move on and tell you a little bit more about the Light Pirate, how that's
Okay.
working out. But happy to answer more questions about corrections if you want. So, there's a lot of different ways you can learn about Light Pirate. I'd encourage you to like, download, subscribe to our podcast. There's 2 episodes about the Light Pirate. We interviewed both experts around climate change, climate resilience in Vermont, and we also went as far afield as Puerto Rico to interview people who've been dealing with the aftermath of Hurricane Maria on the electric grid. A big piece of this book is about what happens to a community after a hurricane comes through and destroys the electrical grid. And so the lead character's dad is actually a lineman trying to keep the power as the water rises. And so that's been a really interesting thing for us in terms of getting out there and talking to people that maybe might not have picked up a novel like this in the past. And we actually got Green Mountain Power to sponsor this for the first time. They've never been sponsored for us before. Lily is coming to Vermont in early April. I know you all are going to be in the thick of it. But if you can take a break and run up to Burlington, she'll be presenting at the Fletcher Free Library on April 11th, which is a Saturday. Hopefully they're not working on Saturdays. But she's also going to Teen Lit Mob in Woodstock, which is more important to us. That's the only teen literary festival in the state of Vermont. About 200 kids typically come each year. About 20 high schools participate. We have a relationship with the Teen Lit Mom organizers where we provide 200 books for the kids to read in advance, to ask the author questions, to get signed. It can be a life-changing experience for a young person who is really just kind of coming to grips with being both a reader and a writer. And reading is not a very popular activity among teenagers these days. So it's really great to see them have solidarity with each other.
And what's the date of that?
So Teen Lit Mob is actually Friday, the 10th of April in Woodstock. Because it's during a school day, it's a field trip. And then she'll be the next day at Fletcher Free Library for an all ages event. So I wanted to tell you just a couple of little stories about what the Light Pirate has done so far. So the first one is from the Smoky House Center in Danby. And I'm just going to read what they sent us. So this is Danielle Zimmerman. She said, Vermont Reads created a powerful shared experience for our community center. The Smoky House Center advances ecologically sound farming and forestry and provides work and learning that includes local youth. Copies of The Light Pirate were distributed to staff, including summer apprentices, and the center hosted a 3-day nature writing workshop in October, led by author Kai Thomas. Reading the same book together opened up meaningful conversations among staff and students, encouraging everyone to reflect deeply, listen generously, and engage with different perspectives. That's, sort of an example of what can happen frequently with Vermont Reads, is that they will take the book and then figure out a project that applies specifically to what they're doing. I've mentioned this, the Vermont Department of Libraries, a couple of times. Joy Orland is one of the staff people there. You might know her. She wrote to us about a national conference that was interested in learning about Vermont Reads for librarians. Here's a little bit of what she told us. The last few years, our department has been collaborating on a project called the Northeast Summit for Climate Adaptation for Libraries. This comprises a webinar series on a range of topics related to libraries responding to climate events. If anybody around here has been to Johnson and seen what happened to the Johnson Public Library, you know that libraries can get really hammered in flood and storm events. The libraries responding to climate events, preparedness, community engagement, and education that places libraries as key community organizations around local climate action. The most recent session, Climate Resilience through Arts Programming, was held in January, and its theme was how arts programming can build resiliency against climate change. One of the projects highlighted was the Repair Cafe at the Brownell Library in Essex, hosted as part of the programming related to the Light Pirate. So they took the Light Pirate, read the book, saw a lot of the way that the characters were repurposing and fixing things that they could no longer get because of the storms. And they actually held what they called their own Repair Cafe, where they encouraged community members from Essex to come to the library with things that were broken. And they taught them how to fix them, which, this is something we all used to do, right? You didn't throw it away, you fixed it. Now it's a consumer society. You're just throwing everything away all the time. So that was pretty cool. They had, I don't know, several dozen people show up with broken stuff. And they had a bunch of handy people telling them how to fix them. Joy continued, I heard about this program at Brownell while we were brainstorming. And I immediately wanted to share this because Vermont, I was delighted by the creativity of integrating the book into a program that taught people how to keep things out of landfills and fend for themselves when things break, whether that's machines or the entire infrastructure that's in the book. The Summit Group loved hosting something about climate action that was creative, proactive, and full of positive energy. And it was a good complement to previous sessions on flood cleanup and adapting to heat emergencies, even in northern regions. And they go on and tell more about what that was like to present that project to librarians all around the country. And then it was like as though they knew that I was coming here. The Rutland Herald wrote an article about Vermont Reads and the Light Pirate that came out just last week, and I included it in your folder, so you have the whole thing. But it was really neat to see what they did at Otter Valley Union High School in Rutland County with this book. Educator and Foothills Program Lead Nicole Vashon Hanlon So the events were part of a larger initiative to incorporate Vermont Reads into our curriculum. Last year we did Vermont Reads and I had taught it as a cross-curricular teacher. We utilized social studies, English, and everything together. We were working to try and find something that would connect our students, our teachers, and our community, which is critical, right? That it needs to be not just in the school, but the full community. The whole theme of their Vermont Reads project and all the different things they did was how do we help our community not just survive, but thrive? One of the speakers told guests that the answer to the question of why Vermont towns are vulnerable to flooding is in large part due to the state's topography. He said, you add that topography to severe rain events and it's a recipe for rivers to overflow their banks. There are two stories that he told, one about changing settlement patterns of Vermont from the early years through the 19th century, and the other is about deforestation. The state is beginning to undertake statewide flood mitigation planning. That's going to be a long and arduous process. And some towns are starting to grapple with it at the local level too. So it's our hope that a Vermont Reads project can prep people for participating in bigger conversations about important issues. I love seeing your work here about the fire and about the river, of course, because this river right here is a perfect example of a 19th century settlement pattern that no longer works.
Right, especially with the hardening of the river, is
Yeah.
what I would say.
Yeah,
I mean, the pattern can work if you're ready to manage the water, right?
Right.
And they used to be able to manage it because upstream there were,
there were floodplains
right,
that now no longer exist.
right.
And as a person who lives at 185 State Street,
Okay,
I am right in
you
it.
know.
My house has been in the river 3 times
Oh my
since I
gosh.
bought it.
Oh my gosh.
You
should have an event at your house.
Yeah, that might have had some reasons for
Yeah.
you know, I'm the boss. I get to have the final say on which book. But it's been really great to see how many people have picked this up. And I'll be honest, we thought we were going to have to push hard on Lily Bean from Wyndham County that people would avoid this book because it takes place in Florida. But nobody has done that.
That's interesting.
Nobody has done
Okay.
that. And we haven't had to really push that Lily is from there. People have just wanted to read it because they see the connections between what's happening in Florida and what's happening here. So this is my sort of conclusion. And then I'm happy to answer questions and get out of your hair for the next thing. I said at the beginning, $630,000 just vanished overnight. We're in the middle of a lawsuit, as are many federal affiliated organizations. That's probably going to take years, if ever, to resolve itself, even though we did win a federal injunction pretty quickly, stating that DOJ was in the wrong and that our funding was illegally and unconstitutionally canceled. That did not give us back the funding, though. It just prevented them from spending it on something else. So it's a pretty critical year. It's the first year that we've ever budgeted to have no federal funding after 51 years, regardless of whether it was Republican or Democrats in the White House managing the National Endowment for the Humanities. It's always been consistent support. Our colleagues in the field who also receive annual state appropriations have been affected as well. The Vermont Symphony Orchestra had a grant canceled by the National Endowment for the Arts. The Vermont Historical Society, which routinely gets over $100,000 a year from the Institute for Museum and Library Studies, is not expecting to get any further funding from IMLS moving forward. And although the Vermont Arts Council did not see a direct cut to their federal funding, they are backfilling on all of the individual arts organizations that did see federal funding that now no longer exists for them. We know that you cannot fix this problem for us or for anyone else. So I just want to be super clear about that. This is a much bigger problem than what the Vermont legislature can fix. But I think it's important that you know that this happened and that it really has a downstream effect on real communities in Vermont, right? The fact that we're out of books, we can't do more. We booked every Speakers Bureau program we could for 2026 already. We had to close the program down in February to new bookings. And we lost 3 staff people. And 20 years of institutional memory because of this. So it's important that we say that out loud. You can't replace the funding. But we collectively, the Vermont Symphony, the Vermont Historical Society, Vermont Arts Council, we are going to the appropriations committees today. And we are asking them if they would take just a symbolic step in our direction and increase our base appropriations by 10% this year. By no means does that even come close to covering the losses that people have experienced, but it would be a nice gesture to say we care about the cultural and creative sector in Vermont. You can see that this is happening to you, and we support you in trying to figure out the way through. For us, it's a really modest increase. 10% increase is just about $32,000. Our annual appropriation in the legislature is only just over $300,000. So it's a pretty small increase. It would push us up to about 360.
And you lost
We lost 630,
630.
right?
That's a lot.
Which is a lot.
Yeah.
And we are figuring it out. It's not easy. We've had to cancel a lot of things. We've had to jury rig a lot of things. But we have a plan to get ourselves through 2028. And then hopefully we'll see what happens. To be honest, Congress just passed a new budget that included the NEH. We have heard nothing from the actual NEH about whether they'll give us that money, but the president signed the bill that appropriates new money for NEH and for the state councils. We'll let you know as soon as that money becomes real. But I've been telling people, I'm not going to believe in it until it's in my bank account and I've spent it,
That is wise.
right? Just not.
Yes.
Because I don't think it's trustworthy. And I've talked to the congressional delegation about this fairly frequently. I'm going there in a couple of weeks to update them, and they know what the situation is, but I don't trust them. So that's our ask. And I felt like I shouldn't come in here with no ask, even though you asked me to talk about Vermont Reads. So if you can see your way clear to taking this symbolic gesture towards adding a little bit to each of the 4 affected cultural organizations, would be really helpful. And thank you for your time.
Thank you for your work, and thank you for your persistence, and thank you for your attitude. Really appreciate it. Does anybody want to have questions or comments? I'm glad you're going to appropriations.
Somehow you all landed on the same day. I don't know how that happened, but I go straight from here to Senator Probst.
So good.
To House of Probst immediately after
Meant
that.
to be.
Meant to be. I don't think I've ever been in Senate committees before crossover.
Good.
So thank you.
Well, then it's about time. Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
And I'll continue talking with you offline.
Yeah, it would be great to talk more about corrections, and I can get you information that's not just anecdotal.
Perfect.
Right? I can tell you what would actually be helpful.
Perfect. Thank you. All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks
All
for
right.
having me.
We will be adjourned. Okay, please. Thank you.